Hi dear children, welcome to our next class. In last class you learnt about the composition of the soil and the types of soils and the formation of soil you learnt. And in today's class you are going to learn about the properties of different soils, how they are different from each other and how to identify the different types of soils you are going to learn in today's class. You can see in this picture with the different colors and different textures and with different particles, you can able to see the different types of soils in the picture and how they are helping for the growth of plants, and also how the composition of these soils different from each other we'll see now. So to understand this lesson, we'll do one small activity now. For this activity, you need some amount of soil. I'll show you. Any type of soil you can take, that either it may be the sandy soil or clay soil or the loamy soil. Any type of soil sample from your garden. You can even take the garden soil. A handful of soil you take for the activity. Now you need a funnel, the tea stainer. If we are not having the funnel which we use in the science lab, you can use a tea stainer for doing this activity. Instead of this, if the funnel is available for you, that's well and good. And inside the funnel, arrange a filter paper, a cone shaped filter paper. You know that how to make a cone shape with filter paper, the paper which have small pores in it called as filter paper. So take the filter paper and make into like a cone. Make a cone shape with the filter paper and arrange this cone shaped paper in funnel. Like this you arrange it and insert inside the funnel. This arrangement is needed when you are using a funnel. But right now we are not using the funnel. So instead of that filter paper, you take a tea stainer here and arrange on a beaker. Here we are using a teacup. So beaker or conical flask, you can see the amount of water, how much amount of water is coming into this conical flask, easily you can see. So instead of this, a glass beaker better to use, or a glass can also be used. Okay, now take, if possible, take 3 different types of soils like sandy soil, clay soil and loamy soil. Once I'll show you how these 3 different types of soils are different from each other. I'll show you in the picture. Here I have taken the loamy soil. Loamy soil means it's a mixture of sand and clay soil. Sand, you know everybody, where the construction is going on, near the construction, new houses construction goes on, there you can see the sand particles. So sand is having bigger particles, whereas clay have very small particles, smooth soil. But in silt or loamy soil, it's the particles are not very big like sand, are not very fine smooth uh, like clay soil. So the mixture of sand and clay forms the loamy soil. So the particles are not too big or the particles are not too small. they are in medium size. So the mixture of sand and clay form the loamy soil. So now take these soils in this stainer. Three different soils in three different funnels. Take the soil in this funnel. Here instead of funnel, we are using the tea stainer. Like this, take three funnels and half the funnel fill it up with the soil. One funnel fill it with sand. One funnel you take clay soil, and in one funnel loamy soil, how I took here. And you take same amount of water and pour in this soil. In three soils, pour the same amount of water and then allow this apparatus without disturbing for few minutes. Now slowly the holes of this container will allow the excess water to the holes of this container will allow the excess water to seep through it and comes to this glass beaker. So the amount of water which you are pouring in the soil completely will not come out. Some amount of water is absorbed by the soil, and by this activity you can understand which soil can hold more amount of water. You do this activity practically and clearly you can understand which sand can hold more amount of water. So now can you guess it and tell me which type of soil can hold more water? Is it the sandy soil or the clay or the loamy soil? Which soil can hold more amount of water? Is it sand? Sand cannot hold more water at all. Why? Because you can see in this picture how the size of the sand particles you can see here. Sand particles are very big in size. So they are having some gaps in between them. That's why they cannot hold the water. The total water, the complete amount of water seep through the funnel. It comes to the beaker. It's not holding. So the loamy soil water holding capacity is very less. Not there. Very poor you can say. It cannot hold the water at all. And the nutrients are also very less in sand. So two properties you learnt now. Sandy soil cannot hold the water because of the big size particles present in sand. And the nutrients are less in sandy soil. Where when you come to we will see in another picture, I'll show you the loamy soil and the clay soil, how they appears you can see in this picture. So here you can see the loamy soil, sandy soil. The first one is sandy soil. So the sand cannot hold the water because of the big size particles. And the next one is clay soil. Even the clay soil cannot hold more, it holds more amount of water. Through the funnel, if you take clay soil inside this funnel and when you pour water, most of the water is absorbed by the clay. Very less amount of water comes seep through this funnel. So clay soil can hold more water. Sandy soil less water. It cannot hold water only. Absent. You can't even say less. It cannot hold the water at all. But whereas clay soil can hold more amount of water because the particles are very small in size. Small size particles the clay soil is having. So it will not allow, the particles are very close to each other. It won't allow the water to seep through it. Understood? And when you come to the loamy soil, it's the mixture of loamy soil is the mixture of sand plus clay. When you mix sand and clay, then you will get the loamy soil. So it is having big particles, at the same time it's also have small particles. So it won't allow much water to seep through, or it cannot hold more amount of water, it won't hold at all. So some amount it holds and some amount of water seep through the funnel. So it can hold enough water. So now can you guess, children, which soil is best for growing? Which soil is best for growing according to the properties? Now you understood that the sand cannot hold the water at all, whereas clay is holding more water, and loam is not holding more, not leaving more water also. Enough water it's holding. So now children, you guess it, which type of soil is good for growing plants? Yes? Obviously, the loamy soil is good for growing plants. It's the best friend for farmers, even for growing our garden plants. Why? Because if we grow the plants or the crops in the sandy soil, it is so dry, cannot hold water only. And you know very well, when there is no water, plants cannot grow in that. And when we grow the plants in clay soil, clay holds more amount of water, so that water logging takes place, and the plants which are growing in the clay soil, due to the more amount of water, they may die. And that's why the loamy soil is the best soil for growing plants, because it holds enough amount of water. Understood, children? So by this way you can identify the different types of soils, and you can also identify which soil is best for growing plants. Okay. And how do you know that this type of soil is formed in this condition, this area, or this areas have the loamy soil, this area have clay soil, like that? How to identify? Yes. So based on your activity, you had to complete this table, children. Depending on your activity, you have to answer this table. Soil A, what is the color and the size of the particles? Texture means when you hold that soil, how do you feel? Is it in the rough structure, or is it smooth? Rough or smooth to touch? That is called texture. So sample soil A is sand. Then the size of particles, how the size of particles in sand? Bigger particles, you know that just now we discussed. And the texture is it smooth or rough? Definitely you can feel when you hold the sand. So hold the sand and then complete this table. After completing your activity, then you write these answers. And then water holding capacity is least, medium, highest in soil, in clay, and in the loamy. How the water holding capacity is, just now I said you, in sand the least amount of water can hold by the sand, so water holding capacity is very 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 less. Now the next sample we had seen the clay soil, and the particle size is small and the texture is very smooth. When you hold it, you can understand how smooth the texture is. And the water holding capacity is medium water it can hold, not very less, not too high. And the soil C, sample C is the color you had to write black in color, and the clay is brown in color. Particles are medium sized. Texture is smooth texture. And water holding capacity is medium. In the clay it is highest. Here you have to write highest. Here medium. Clay it is highest, whereas in the loamy soil it is medium. So by this activity you can prove that which soil is good for growing plants. Yes children? So to know more about this soils, how to identify them, and before suggesting to the farmers and to your parents, your neighbors, you can suggest what type of soil they can use to grow their plants. To know more about this, we will see the video of this lesson. You can see
soil can be of different types.
There are different types of soils, and the sample which you are seeing in the picture is sand. So it has the bigger particles.
The three main types of soil are sandy, clayey, and loamy soils. Sandy soil has big sand particles with poor water holding capacity. Clayey soil has very small clay particles and the highest water holding capacity. Loamy soil is a mix of sand, silt, and clay particles. It has medium water holding capacity but is very fertile.
Yes, children, it is so fertile. Fertile means good for growing plants. It has enough amount of nutrients and good for growing plants. Understood? And then how these soils are formed? Every soil is formed by weathering process only? No. Then how this loamy clays or sandy soil are formed means depending on the rock. You know that in yesterday's class you learnt that all the soils are formed from rocks. When the rocks get break down, the soil is formed. That you learnt in yesterday's class clearly. So the process is called weathering. So weathering depending on the type of rock. If the rock is very rough and the sandy soil is formed, and it is also depending on the microorganisms, very tiny microbes which are there in that soil also. Depending on that also the soil fertility depends. If many microbes, many small microorganisms are there in that soil, then definitely that soil is very very fertile and useful for growing plants. So depend on the parent rock, and also depending on the microbes present in that soil, and it can also depend on the climate of that area. If the rock is from very cold climate, then it cannot form the smooth, or it takes very long time for the formation of the rocks. Like Arctic region, very cool climate, so it takes long time for weathering process. Whereas in hot regions, it forms the soil very quickly due to the sun's heat. Understood, children? So, what difference you had seen when water was poured in three different soil samples? You know very well, sand cannot hold water, clay is holding more water, where loamy is holding medium amount. How do soil types vary? That is depending on the particle size, right? So these all you can answer very well. Why do we find different soils at different places? Just now I told you that is depending on their climate and weathering in different areas, the types of plants that grow, and the amount of organic matter that is formed, and that depending on that the fertility of the soil takes place. So the soil in cold places is less fertile, whereas slowly weathering takes place in cool areas. Understood, children? Now you try to answer the worksheet questions. When you are able to answer these questions by your own, without your teacher help or your parent help, from the content book you can use and write the answer, so that you can prove it you understood the content very well. So you can see the first question here is, name the soil. Is one picture is given here. Name of the soil, is it a sandy soil or loamy soil? First picture, particles are very big, so it is definitely sandy soil. And the next picture is, particle size is very small, so it is loamy soil. And size of the soil particle, here the big size, here the small size particles. Water holding capacity is least capacity, here more water, not more, medium water can hold by loamy soil. And the last one is this type of soil good for growing plants? No. In this soil, plants cannot grow well because it cannot hold the water. When there is no water, plants cannot grow in that soil. So write this answer by your own. And here, this is good for growing plants because enough amount of water available in this soil. Understood, children? Now we will see the next question. Why is the soil in the Arctic region different from the soil in hot desert region? Just now we discussed this. In cold region, weathering weathering is very less. Weathering process takes place long time in cool areas, so that soil is less fertile less fertile in cool areas. Okay, whereas in desert areas, weathering process is very fast. In desert, weathering is very fast, and the soil which is formed by this way is also very fertile. These are just I gave you hint, children. You can write these answers by your own. Okay. Now once we will also discuss the practice questions which have given in your content book. So here there are different types of soil depending on the dash of the soil. Size of the Soil particles are depending on the era. The size of the soil particles, soils are different. And next one, soil particles are bigger in soil. Which soil have soil particles are bigger in size? That is sandy soil. Now the next question is, loamy soil is known as gardener's best friend because that is so good for growing plants. You have to give the reason for that answer, that question. Clay soil is not good for plants. What is the reason means it holds more water. It holds more water it is holding so that plants may die. If excess water when you pour to the water, what happens children? Automatically the plants will die. They cannot grow healthily. And the last one, what is the role of microorganisms in soil fertility? They'll make the soil so fertile because they will make it porous. They make the gaps in between the soil particles so that air goes deep into the soil and make the soil very fertile. Understood, children? So, in today's class, you learnt about the three different types of soils and their uses. Okay? Thank you.